Hello and welcome. I'm Geeta Mohan and you're watching India Today Global. We begin the show with some breaking news that's coming in. Well, news that's just coming in. External Affairs Minister Dr. Jaishankar has spoken to his U.S. counterpart, U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio. Jaishankar, in a social media post, has said that he's just concluded a good conversation with Secretary Rubio. The two sides discussed trade, critical minerals, nuclear cooperation, defense and energy. Agreed to remain in touch on these and other issues is what he's written. This is the news that's just coming in. The U.S. ambassador designate to India, Sergio Gore, had earlier said that there is going to be a trade deal sooner than later, and there's going to be a conversation between DC and New Delhi. I suppose that conversation, not with trade reps, but between the foreign ministers, took place just now. We'll have to wait and see how the trade talks really move ahead. Talks now are coming days after Trump aide's big claim on trade, where he said that the deal did not go through because the two sides wanted, or Washington DC wanted Modi to call Trump, and that call did not take place. But right now, that's the news that's just coming in. There is a thaw that we can see with Sergio Gore's positive statements and remarks at his arrival speech, and then later now the conversation between Jaishankar and his counterpart Marco Rubio. My colleague Pranay Upadhyay joins me for more on this. Pranay, important conversation happening a day after Sergio Gore says that the two sides are going to remain connected and engaged on trade. But over here, they've gone beyond trade. They've also spoken about defense, energy, critical minerals, nuclear cooperation.
Indeed, Geeta, and not only the recent statement by the U.S. Ambassador designate Sergio Gore, but also a consecutive second high-level engagement between Government of India and Government of the United States, because India's IT Minister Ashwini Vaishnaw visited Washington D.C. to attend the meeting on critical minerals, chaired by the U.S. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent. And now, External Affairs Minister Dr. Jaishankar had a telephonic conversation with Secretary of State Marco Rubio. And these are the two top diplomats of India and the United States, talking about various issues. U.S. has already extended, an invitation for India to join the Pax Silica. India is also scheduled to host a meeting on artificial intelligence, and that is also a partnership which both countries are likely to work upon. And besides that, the defense, we know that recently the 10-year defense agreement has also been extended and signed. Besides that, in the sector of the nuclear energy, in terms of the energy engagement, there are a lot of things which India and the United States are quietly working to repair the relationship, which got derailed by the recent tariffs and Trump under Trump administration. But there is a sincere commitment on either side to have a longer and a sustainable and a stronger partnership.
Right. Pranay, thank you so much for joining us. Keep tracking developments on that front. Now, U.S. President Donald Trump has announced a fresh tariff threat targeting countries that trade with Iran, sending shockwaves across global markets. India is among those watching closely, but how much of India's trade is actually at risk, and should exporters be worried? Here's a report by Jyoti Shukla.
U.S. President Donald Trump has once again rattled global trade with a sweeping announcement. A 25% tariff on any country doing business with Iran. Framed as a pressure tactic against Tehran, the move has sparked concern across capitals, including New Delhi. The announcement has also drawn a sharp response from China, Iran's biggest trading partner. Beijing has warned that tariff wars help no one and says it will defend its economic interests.
China's position on tariffs is very clear. There are no winners in a tariff war. China will firmly safeguard its legitimate rights and interests.
But how serious is the impact on India? At first glance, the numbers look worrying. India exported goods worth $1.24 billion to Iran in financial year 2025, and Trump's blanket tariff threat puts that trade under scrutiny. The most exposed sector by value is rice, which alone accounted for over $757 million or more than 61% of India's exports to Iran. However, here's where the picture becomes more nuanced. India's trade with Iran is already tightly constrained by US Treasury rules enforced by the Office of Foreign Assets Control, or OFAC. Imports from Iran, mainly organic chemicals and dry fruits like dates and pistachios, have already declined sharply, leaving India with a healthy trade surplus. Trump's Iran-related duties could push overall tariffs even higher, potentially up to 75%, at a moment when New Delhi and Washington are still negotiating tariff relief. For now, India may avoid immediate damage, but Trump's latest move once again highlights how unilateral trade threats announced via social media continue to destabilize global commerce, even when the economic fallout is far from clear. With Jyoti Shukla, Bureau Report, India Today Global.
Now, Iran says weeks-long protests driven by economic hardship are being fueled by the US and Israel, claiming foreign interference and Mossad involvement. Israel has voiced support for protesters, while China has opposed outside meddling. Mahashweta Lala with this detailed report.
Iran has been facing demonstrations for third week now, resulting from severe economic crisis. A day after Iranian Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi said that Tehran is ready for war but is open to negotiations, Iran claims to have obtained extensive documents and evidence linking the unrest to the US and Israel, stating that Mossad agents attempted to direct such terrorist acts.
We have a large amount of documents and evidence indicating the involvement of both the United States and Israel in this terrorist act. Israeli media reports are rife with claims that Israel has designed and conducted operations in Iran. Mr. Pompeo, who was Trump's CIA director, said on his X that Happy New Year to every Iranian in the streets and to every Mossad agent walking beside them. This clearly shows that Mossad agents attempted to direct such terrorist acts.
In a latest post on Truth Social, US President Donald Trump has called Iranian protesters patriots and asked them to keep protesting and to take over the institutions. He further added that he has cancelled all meetings with Iranian officials till the time killings were stopped. Earlier, Trump mentioned that Iranian leaders were willing to negotiate. This also comes after Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, during a cabinet meet, expressed his support for the protesters in Iran.
Israel is closely monitoring developments in Iran. The demonstrations for freedom have spread across the country. The people of Israel and the entire world are in awe of the immense courage of Iranian citizens. Israel supports their struggle for freedom and strongly condemns the mass killings of innocent civilians. We all hope that the Persian nation will soon be freed from the yoke of tyranny, and when that day comes, Israel and Iran will once again be loyal partners in building a future of prosperity and peace for both peoples.
But Iranians at home and abroad have condemned what they called riots supported by foreign forces and opposed the interference of the United States and Israel. Tens of thousands of pro-government Iranians gathered in the center of Tehran, waving national flags and chanting slogans against the United States and Israel. They said that the US and Israel used terrorists to create unrest in Iran with the aim of weakening and splitting Iran while seeking their own interests. Iranian President Masoud Pezeshkian too participated in pro-government rally. Pezeshkian was seen marching alongside protesters through the capital street.
All the US so-called negotiations are fraud. They just want to make Iran unsafe and divided, just like what they did in Syria and Iraq, and seek their own interests. The American president is talking nonsense. He wants to stir up Muslim countries. They want wars to break out between them. In other words, for Muslims to kill each other. That's what I think.
China, while expressing concern for the security of its citizens in Iran, condemned foreign interference in the internal affairs of another country.
China hopes and supports Iran in maintaining national stability. We have always opposed interference in other countries' international affairs and the use or threat of force in international relations, and hope that all parties will do more to promote peace and stability in the Middle East.
The widespread protest in the 31 provinces of Iran is the biggest since 2022 protest followed the death of Mahsa Amini in police custody. With Mahashweta Lala, Bureau Report, India Today.
And joining me to discuss Iran is Hossein Rafipour. He's a postdoctoral researcher at the University of Oxford, joining me from London, from the United Kingdom. Hossein, thank you so much for joining me. Let's begin with the situation on the ground. Now, we have seen protests in Iran in the past as well, but that really did not lead to any change on the ground. What's different about this one?
Thank you so much, firstly, for having me in your media. I appreciate this opportunity to let us discuss what's happening in the ground and hearing the true voices of the people in Iran. Yeah, that's a very good mention that it's not just the first time that people are protesting in the streets. We have been doing this for many, many years. I lived in Iran for about 30 years, and since I was a teenager, I remember there was a protest about many different issues. I see the government now framing it as it's only being a protest about the economic situation, but it's way more deep. The economic situation is horrible in Iran, but also we had uprising about women's rights, about basic human rights, about minorities. All the aspects in different dimensions have been a matter of protest for us. This one is bigger because almost everybody is convinced that there is no way forward. We have tried reform for many years. I've been a pro-reformist for a long time, but throughout the years, I've been convinced there is no way forward with this regime. And that's why people are chanting
But
for regime change.
let me interrupt you here. You know, in a scenario where we're looking at tensions, but also a lot of protests, like we see on your screen, there are also pro-government rallies that we're seeing, and there is a massive allegation by the Tehran administration that of foreign hand in these protests. America and Mossad have been named. What do you have to say about that?
I can talk about my personal experience. I've been in the streets of Tehran just chanting for reform to make sure that our votes were counted. But even then, I had no connections with anyone outside of Iran. But that was the main accusation, that you have been working for foreign agencies, CIA, Mossad, or any others. That's been a very, very common scenario that the regime always uses to justify their brutal actions against the protests. This is not new for us. And I hope the international community can see that this is a very old way for them to justify brutal actions and killings.
Right, Hossein. Hossein, we're completely running out of time. We will try to get back to you on the details of what's happening on the ground. But as of now, we'll keep our focus on Iran, but shifting to another story as well, because this is an exclusive. The capture of Nicolas Maduro didn't happen overnight. The CIA sent a team into Venezuela that began tracking Maduro's movements using a source close to the Venezuelan president, with plans made for his capture months in advance. This was a complex intelligence operation that required operatives on the ground, not boots, but spies, assets, and sources working in the shadows. In an exclusive conversation with me, Eric O'Neill said that this operation took months to orchestrate. He's a legendary former FBI agent who unraveled Robert Hanssen. You might want to read about him, but here's what he had to say.
That's entirely correct. And the win that happened in Venezuela, a operation that was one of the most sophisticated and well-run military and law enforcement operations that I think I've ever seen was because of very good espionage. It began with a first phase, which deployed US CIA intelligence operatives into Venezuela, which is a hostile country. We don't have a diplomacy there. And so these intelligence officers had to go in without any diplomatic cover. If they had been caught, they would have been arrested and jailed, and learn what we call a pattern of life on Nicolas Maduro, the president of Venezuela, who the U.S., by example, has never recognized as the legitimate president. And that pattern of life meant they knew exactly where Maduro would be at any given time, what he'd like to do, where all of his different homes and safe houses were, and most importantly, after months of learning about him, where he would be precisely the night that the military escorted FBI agents into the Venezuelan interior to serve a warrant on Maduro and arrest him. So none of this could have happened unless the CIA had learned exactly where Maduro would be and when, so the operation could go off flawlessly without a hitch. Now, it's not completely unique. What is unique about this case is the sophistication and the overwhelming success. If you look back in history, the most comparable act like this was in 1989 when the U.S. went into Panama and removed Noriega, who was then the military leader of Panama. This was far less bloody in comparison, and the U.S. didn't maintain a presence in Venezuela like they did in Panama. But it is very unique in that we have not seen this very often in history, and it does set the stage and create quite a lot of concern, and that might be design for other dictators of countries who are adverse to U.S. interests, that this could happen to them. This operation could never have happened without real-time, on-the-ground intelligence. So the intelligence that was gathered was not just where Maduro would be, but the CIA had a source that was close to Maduro that was feeding them information. They were using surveillance drones. They were using cyber espionage, and I am almost 100% certain that when the invasion of Venezuela to allow helicopters to move into the interior happened, that was the military strike, about 120 planes who led bombing runs at military installations. That actually began with a cyber attack that turned the lights out in Caracas and denied the Venezuelan military their early warning systems, radar and other systems, that those planes were coming. So the military in Venezuela, the secret police surrounding Maduro were caught completely off guard and totally blind to the fact that this was happening until special forces and FBI agents showed up at Maduro's door at a safe house he ran to and arrested him. So yes, you were completely right, Rita. It was all intelligence that allowed this to happen. I think it would be very difficult to pull this off had there not been a source who was providing information from within that circle, or at least very close to Maduro. It's hard to keep track of someone in a hostile country. That person would have had to give them some information and intel on his movements, where he liked to go, where his homes were. And so certainly that penetration of the inner circle, what we call a mole or a trusted insider, was critical to the success of this operation. Well, military operations across the entire world in different points at the same time are difficult because we only have so much military. So, for example, there is critical unrest in Iran. And there are some who are thinking that perhaps the U.S. could be planning a strike in Iran. That could be difficult considering that many of our surface warfare ships are blockading Venezuela. So do you move them all the way back to the Middle East, or do you leave them there in the Caribbean? Those would be decisions that would have to be made. Of course, we do have long-range sortie bombers. It just depends on the military action that could be planned. Now, that's not saying that there's any plan in Iran. Sometimes an action like what happened in Venezuela creates a deterrence effect on other countries who might not want to tangle with the U.S. military, and can help benefit negotiations and pushing toward peace in other ways. And I think that is the central precept of what the Trump administration is calling their new peace through strength policy. If it works, it means that you don't have to use that force because of fear that that force could be deployed.
Tariffs.